The station's repairs were underway, but the atmosphere among the team was tense. The Galactic Council's disdain hung over them like a shadow, a constant reminder that their every move was being scrutinized. Elena stood in the control room, her arms crossed as she stared at the holographic projection of the alien ship. It remained silent and unmoving, a dark sentinel waiting to deliver the next challenge. "We can't let them rattle us," she said, her voice firm despite the unease gnawing at her. "We've proven we can think creatively. Now we need to prove we can endure." Captain Hale leaned against the console, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. "Endurance isn't the issue. It's their interference. They'll do whatever it takes to see us fail." Elena nodded, her jaw tightening. The Council's sabotage during the first test had been a stark reminder of their hostility, but she refused to let it deter her. Humanity's future was at stake, and she would not let it slip away. Before she could respond, the station's alarms blared, the sharp sound cutting through the air like a knife. The holographic projection flickered, then shifted to display a new image. A barren, rocky planet, its surface scarred by deep canyons and jagged peaks. A single structure stood in the center of the projection, a massive, crystalline tower that pulsed with an eerie light. "Another test," Elena muttered, her heart racing. "What now?" The voice of the AI echoed through the room, its tone as calm and enigmatic as ever. "Welcome to the second trial. Build, survive, thrive, or perish." The projection zoomed in on the planet's surface, revealing a harsh, inhospitable environment. The atmosphere was thin, the temperature extremes brutal, and the ground littered with unstable tectonic faults. It was a place where survival seemed impossible, let alone thriving. Elena turned to her team, her mind already racing. "We need to establish a sustainable colony, but we'll have to adapt to the environment. No room for error." Raj stepped forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "The key will be energy. Without a stable power source, we're dead in the water." May nodded, her eyes scanning the data. "The crystalline tower, it's emitting energy signatures. If we can harness that, it might be enough to sustain us." Hale crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "And if it's unstable? Or worse, if it's a trap?" Elena met his gaze, her determination unwavering. "We don't have a choice. We'll have to take the risk." The team moved quickly, their movements precise and efficient. Supplies were gathered, equipment checked, and plans finalized. Within hours, they were ready to descend to the planet's surface. The shuttle ride was tense, the team silent as they approached the barren landscape. The crystalline tower loomed in the distance, its pulsing light casting an otherworldly glow over the rocky terrain. As they touched down, the reality of their situation became all too clear. The air was thin and cold, the ground unstable beneath their feet. The tower was even more imposing up close, its surface shimmering with an almost hypnotic energy. "Let's move," Elena said, her voice steady despite the knot of anxiety in her chest. "We don't have much time." The team set to work, their movements fueled by a sense of urgency. May and Raj focused on the tower, studying its energy signatures and devising a way to harness its power. Hale and the security team scouted the area, searching for resources and potential threats. Elena coordinated their efforts, her mind racing as she balanced the immediate needs with the long-term goals. Hours turned into days, the team working tirelessly to establish a foothold on the hostile planet. The tower proved to be both a blessing and a curse. Its energy was immense, but it was also unstable, its pulses growing more erratic as they tapped into its power. May and Raj worked around the clock to stabilize the connection, their exhaustion evident but their determination unshaken. "We're close," Raj said, his voice hoarse from hours of work. "But if we push it too far, the whole thing could blow." Elena nodded, her eyes scanning the data. "We'll have to risk it. Without power, we're finished." As the team prepared to activate the final connection, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The tectonic faults were shifting, the planet's unstable core reacting to their presence. The tower's light grew brighter, its pulses more intense. "Now or never," May said, her hands hovering over the controls. Elena took a deep breath, her heart pounding. Do it! May activated the connection, the tower's energy surging through the colony's systems. For a moment, everything seemed to hold its breath. Then, the ground shook violently, a deep rumble echoing through the air. The tower's light flared, its energy stabilizing as the connection held. The colony's systems came online, the lights flickering to life as the power flowed through the network. The team let out a collective sigh of relief, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten. But their victory was short-lived. The Galactic Council's voice crackled over the comms, their tone cold and dismissive. A crude and inefficient solution. You have merely delayed the inevitable. Elena's jaw tightened, her hands clenching into fists. We survived. That's what matters. Zanara's response was curt. Survival is not enough. You must thrive. The final test awaits. The comms went silent, leaving the team in a heavy silence. Hale stepped forward, his expression grim. They're not going to stop until we fail. Elena shook her head, her determination unshaken. Then we'll just have to keep proving them wrong. As the team began the arduous task of expanding the colony, Elena felt a surge of resolve. They had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger. But the final test loomed on the horizon, a challenge that would push them to their limits. The section ends with the team preparing for the final trial, their resolve unbroken despite the Council's hostility. The stage is set for the ultimate test, and the tension continues to build as humanity's fate hangs in the balance. The stars above Earth shimmered faintly, their light dulled by the haze of pollution and the glow of sprawling megacities. Humanity had clawed its way into the cosmos, but its presence was still a whisper in the vast expanse of the galaxy. The Galactic Council, a coalition of ancient and advanced species, regarded Earth with a mixture of indifference and mild curiosity. To them, humans were little more than upstarts, clever, perhaps, but lacking the sophistication to warrant a seat at the table of interstellar power. Yet, on this unremarkable night, everything was about to change. Dr. Elena Voss stood on the observation deck of the United Earth Space Station, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as she stared out at the stars. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose bun, and her sharp green eyes reflected the faint glow of the control panels behind her. At 34, she was one of the youngest lead scientists in the history of the Interstellar Research Initiative, a fact that had earned her as much resentment as admiration. Her mind was a labyrinth of equations and theories, but it was her relentless curiosity that had propelled her to the forefront of humanity's efforts to understand the universe. Behind her, the hum of activity was a constant backdrop. Technicians and engineers moved about the deck, their voices a low murmur of urgency. The station had been on high alert for the past 6 hours, ever since the unidentified vessel had appeared in Earth's orbit. It was massive, its sleek, obsidian hull reflecting no light, as though it devoured the very stars around it. No signals had been detected from within, no life signs, no movement. It simply hung there, silent and imposing, like a predator waiting to strike. "Dr. Voss!" a voice called, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to see Captain Marcus Hale approaching, his broad shoulders and military bearing making him an imposing figure even in the cramped confines of the station. His dark skin glistened under the artificial lights, and his expression was as unreadable as ever. Hale was the head of the station's security detail, a man who had seen more combat in his 40 years than most soldiers could imagine. He was a pragmatist, a man who trusted actions over words, and his presence was a reminder of the gravity of the situation. "Any updates?" Elena asked, her voice calm but edged with tension. Elena sighed, running a hand through her hair. The Galactic Council had arrived within hours of the ship's appearance, their sleek silver vessels a stark contrast to the utilitarian design of Earth's fleet. They had been dismissive from the start, treating the situation as though it were a minor inconvenience rather than a potential crisis. Their ambassador, a tall, willowy alien named Zanara, had made it clear that humanity was out of its depth. Elena met his gaze, her jaw tightening. We don't have a choice. If we let them take over, we'll never prove we're capable of standing on our own. This is our chance, Marcus. Our chance to show them what we're made of. Dr. Voss, we're receiving a signal from the ship. Elena hurried to the console, her fingers flying over the controls as she pulled up the data. The signal was unlike anything they had ever seen. A complex pattern of light and sound that seemed to shift and change with every passing second. It was beautiful and alien, and it sent a shiver down her spine. Can we decode it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The technician shook his head. Not yet, but there's something else. It's repeating a phrase. In English. Elena's breath caught in her throat. What is it? The technician hesitated, then played the audio. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the room. It was neither male nor female, but something entirely other. And its words sent a chill through everyone who heard them. What's your excuse? The room fell silent, the weight of the words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Elena felt a knot of unease tighten in her stomach. This wasn't just a message, it was a challenge, a test, and she had no idea what the stakes were. Before she could process the implications, the station shook violently, the force of it sending her stumbling into the console. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered as the power grid struggled to compensate. Hale was at her side in an instant, his hand gripping her arm to steady her. What the hell was that? He demanded, his voice sharp with urgency. Elena didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the viewscreen, where the alien ship had begun to move. A section of its hull had opened, revealing a glowing portal that pulsed with an eerie light. From within, a smaller vessel emerged, sleek and angular, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. It moved with a grace that defied physics, gliding toward the station as though it were part of the void itself. They're coming? Elena whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Hale's grip tightened. We need to evacuate. No, Elena said, her voice firm despite the fear coursing through her veins. This is what we've been waiting for. This is our chance. Hale studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right, but we do this on our terms. Elena turned to the technicians, her mind racing. Prepare a team. We're going to make first contact. As the station scrambled to respond, Elena felt a surge of determination. This was humanity's moment, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. Whatever was waiting on that ship, she would face it head-on. The alien vessel docked with the station, its seamless integration with the airlock a testament to its advanced technology. Elena stood at the forefront of the hastily assembled team, her heart pounding in her chest. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor bathed in soft, golden light. The air was cool and carried a faint, metallic scent. Elena took a deep breath and stepped forward, her team following close behind. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever, its walls smooth and featureless. As they walked, the voice echoed in her mind, its words a constant reminder of the challenge ahead. What's your excuse? The corridor opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and atop it rested a sphere of swirling light. As Elena approached, the sphere pulsed, and the voice spoke again, this time directly to her. Welcome, humanity. You have been chosen. Prove your worth. Elena exchanged a glance with Hale, who gave her a nod of encouragement. She stepped forward, her hand hovering over the sphere. What do you want from us? The sphere's light intensified, and the voice replied, solve the unsolvable, save the doomed, or perish. The room shifted, the walls dissolving into a star's cape. Before them floated a dying star, its surface roiling with violent eruptions. A nearby planet, lush and vibrant, was caught in its death throes, its atmosphere already beginning to burn away. Elena's mind raced. This was the first test, and she had no idea how much time they had. But one thing was clear. Failure was not an option. As the team began to work, Elena felt a spark of hope. This was humanity's chance to prove itself, and she would not let it go to waste. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The section ends with the team working frantically to solve the first test, the weight of the challenge pressing down on them. The stakes are high, and the outcome uncertain, but Elena's determination shines through, setting the stage for the trials to come. The dying star loomed before them, its fiery tendrils lashing out into the void like the claws of a wounded beast. Elena's mind raced as she stared at the holographic projection, her fingers dancing across the console as she input calculations. The planet below was already suffering, its atmosphere thinning under the relentless onslaught of radiation. Time was slipping away, and every second counted. "We need to stabilize the star," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "If we can't slow its collapse, the planet is lost." Her team worked in silence, their faces illuminated by the glow of the screens. Among them was Dr. Raj Patel, a brilliant astrophysicist with a knack for unconventional solutions. His dark eyes were narrowed in concentration as he ran simulations, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Beside him stood Lieutenant Mei Chun, a young engineer whose quiet demeanor belied a fierce intellect. She was already sketching out potential designs for a device that could mitigate the star's collapse. Captain Hale stood at the periphery, his arms crossed and his expression grim. He was out of his element here, surrounded by scientists and engineers, but his presence was a steadying force. "How long do we have?" he asked, his deep voice cutting through the tension. "Hours, maybe less," Elena replied, not looking up from her work. "The star's core is destabilizing faster than we anticipated. If we don't act soon, the planet will be uninhabitable." The room was filled with the hum of machinery and the soft beeping of monitors, but the silence between the team members was palpable. They were all too aware of the stakes. This wasn't just a test. It was a statement, a chance to prove that humanity was more than the sum of its parts. "What if we use a gravity well?" Raj suggested suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. "We could create a temporary singularity to siphon off the excess energy from the star. It would buy us time to stabilize the core." Elena's eyes lit up. "That could work, but we'd need to generate an enormous amount of power to create the singularity. More than we have access to." May glanced up from her sketches. "What about the station's reactor? If we reroute all non-essential systems, we might be able to generate enough power for a short burst." Hale frowned. "That's a big risk. If we drain the reactor, we'll be dead in the water. No life support, no communications, nothing." Elena met his gaze, her jaw set. "We don't have a choice. If we don't try, that planet dies. And if we fail here, we fail the test." Hale hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." The team sprang into action, their movements precise and efficient. May worked feverishly to modify the reactor, her hands steady despite the pressure. Raj coordinated with the station's AI to calculate the precise coordinates for the singularity, while Elena monitored the star's decay, her heart pounding with every passing second. As the final preparations were made, the tension in the room was almost unbearable. Elena's hands trembled as she input the final commands, her mind racing through every possible outcome. This was it, the moment of truth. "Ready on your mark," Raj said, his voice calm but edged with tension. Elena took a deep breath, her finger hovering over the console. "Mark." The station shuddered as the reactor surged, its power diverted to the gravity well generator. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a faint ripple appeared in the fabric of space, a distortion that grew rapidly until it formed a swirling vortex of light and energy. The singularity was alive, its pull drawing in the excess energy from the star like a sponge soaking up water. Elena watched the monitors intently, her breath caught in her throat. The star's surface began to calm, its violent eruptions subsiding as the singularity absorbed the energy. The planet below was still in danger, but the immediate threat had been neutralized. "It's working," May whispered, her voice filled with awe, but their relief was short-lived. The station's lights flickered as the reactor struggled to maintain the singularity. Alarms blared, and the air grew thin as life support systems began to fail. "We're losing power," Raj shouted, his voice barely audible over the din. Elena's mind raced. They had bought themselves time, but it wasn't enough. They needed a permanent solution, and they needed it fast. "What if we use the singularity to reignite the star's core?" she said suddenly, the idea forming even as she spoke. "If we can channel the energy back into the star, we might be able to stabilize it." Raj's eyes widened. "That's insane, but it just might work." The team worked frantically, their movements fueled by desperation and determination. May reconfigured the gravity well generator, while Raj calculated the precise trajectory for the energy transfer. Elena monitored the star's core, her heart pounding as she watched the numbers fluctuate. "Ready?" Raj said, his voice tight with tension. Elena nodded. "Do it." The station shuddered again as the singularity collapsed. Its energy funneled back into the star in a brilliant burst of light. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the star's surface began to stabilize, its core reignited by the influx of energy. The team watched in stunned silence as the star's violent eruptions ceased, its surface calming to a steady glow. The planet below was safe, its atmosphere no longer under threat. "We did it," May said, her voice filled with disbelief. Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her legs trembling with relief. They had passed the first test, but the cost had been high. The station was in shambles, its systems barely functional. And the Galactic Council's representatives were not impressed. Zanara's voice crackled over the comms, her tone cold and dismissive. "A reckless and inefficient solution. You risked everything for a single planet. This is not the behavior of a species ready to join the Council." Elena's jaw tightened, her hands clenching into fists. "We saved lives. Isn't that what matters?" Zanara's response was curt. "You will face further tests. Do not expect leniency." The comms went silent, leaving the team in a heavy silence. Hale stepped forward, his expression grim. "They're not going to make this easy for us." Elena nodded, her mind already racing ahead. "We knew they wouldn't, but we're not done yet." As the team began the arduous task of repairing the station, Elena felt a surge of determination. They had proven they could think outside the box, that they could overcome impossible odds. But the next test would be even harder, and the stakes would be higher. The section ends with the team preparing for the next challenge, their resolve unshaken despite the Council's disapproval. The stage is set for the trials to come, and the tension continues to build as humanity's fate hangs in the balance.